I'd like to begin this episode by thanking some people like the Sea Peoples, just all of them, Jackal All Trades, and Harry Samways.
Boo. Booing that name.
Oh man. All these are people, booed names or not, who have gone to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and kicked us some money and gotten cool stuff in return. Not just the thanks, but content and things like that.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs Dispatch, our monthly show where we answer your questions and discuss topics and read your responses.
Yeah, hidden responses to February's games, which, because of the way podcasts and memory work, I forget what they were. We recorded that last week. We split this one up. So it has been jettisoned into the memory pit.
Yeah. Nothing matters. Only the now. Speaking of, let's get into it.
Yeah.
I got a question here from Casey. Casey says, what do you think your favorite songwriter's Souls build would be? Personally, I think Bob Mould from Husker Du would run a Dex/Spear build. Stephen Malkmus would be a longsword, lightly armored knight guy, and all shoegazers are mages. Thanks, and have a great day.
Yeah. I think that John Darnielle would end up being kind of like try to go for a hex caster who also used heavy armor and a mace.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I not totally sure. I think that Bob Mould, I don't know that he would be Dex Spear. I just think of that guy is more intimidating.
Yeah.
It's like a kind of a tough guy.
I don't know. Maybe it's only like the Husker dude that I know. But that music is a little bit more intense on the intense side of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the maybe like a faith spear kind of thing to shoot lightning and shit.
Yeah.
I kind of see that. Either that's kind of like a Dragon Force or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Weirdly tricky question, Casey.
Yeah.
Don't know. Generally, my favorite musicians would be like video games.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Probably.
I end up almost universally the musicians that I favor toward are the people who in interviews have been asked and they said, yeah, I lost like 2 weeks to Grand Theft Auto once in the early 2000s and I decided never again.
Yeah.
You know,
just quitting.
Yeah.
They're busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like us, I suppose, is the implication.
I guess. Yeah. And the horrifying things they were saying about all gamers.
Yeah, exactly. The astute people in the audience will know.
Mm-hmm. Bo writes, you've talked about your individual gaming psychographics on the show before. What compels your compression in games, draws you from one game to another, etc., as well as those types which you feel are totally alien to your experience. The difficulty chasers or 100% completionists, or 10,000 hours in a live service type gamers. I was wondering if you feel that your psychographic has changed as you've done Duckfeed, or if not, if you would like to change how your compulsions may drive your play. I rarely let myself languish in media, and I feel most comfortable when trying to fill every free second of my day with new things to read, watch, or play. Despite this, I often wish I could settle into a familiar comfort instead of constantly trying to build my personal library of experiences up. Thanks for the show.
Thank you, Bo.
Yeah.
Always like that name, Bo.
Yeah. This is a little bit related to the topic question that we have.
Yeah.
but like, I think we can save the answers that would be better for that for this. But like, has our psychographic changed? For me, it is impossible to kind of disaggregate because I have been doing Duckfeed my entire independent adult life in some
Mhm.
form or fashion. Like WAF started when I was 23, like a year and change out of college. And so I could say something like, oh, my relationship with time has changed, but that's just being an adult. So
Mhm.
it's hard to say, attribute what is, down to playing games for the show and what is down to just, I started at 23 and now I'm 35.
Yeah. I yeah, that makes sense. And most of, I haven't been doing duck feed for most of that. I had my 20s,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been doing it for, half of the time.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I don't think it's changed so much as solidified because I've had to talk about it.
Yeah.
So like the experience of me going up against a game that is not something that I think that I would like very much, that doesn't hold appeal.
Mm-hmm.
For me, would be the kind of thing that previous to this, I would just fall off of,
Yeah.
or I would push myself through and have a vague sense of dissatisfaction
Yes.
that I didn't understand because I wasn't really asking myself to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked about before, like San Andreas, ancient game, but like the first game where I went through and I was trying to collect all the packages or something, and I was like, God, this fucking blows.
Mm-hmm.
Like this sucks so bad. I hate every moment of this. Like I went out and bought a guide so I could have it next to the couch
Okay.
for like looking up where the stuff I couldn't find, like the
Yeah.
packages. And then if I had done that now, I would be like, oh, I ain't doing that. That fucking sucks. And here's why. Like I know why that is just pointless busy work.
Yes.
To me, to my mind demographic, people who love collecting things,
Mm-hmm.
love collecting things. Right. So I would have just forced myself through, or I would just quit, which happened. Like I would play, the first 10 hours of like Xenoblade 2
Yeah.
or Xenosaga rather.
Yes.
Xenosaga 2 and be like, this fucking sucks, man. Hit the
You mean
bricks.
you mean Xenosaga Part 2? Oh gosh. Der Zermacht. Yes, they all had
Yeah.
pretentious German Nietzsche quotes.
Exactly. And I would play it and I would just be like, man, this fucking sucks, and just stop and never think about it again. And then if Derek was like, hey man, what'd you think about that? I'd be like, yeah, that sucks. And that'd be the end of the discussion.
Yeah.
It was just simpler times. So like, I think I still was generally driven by a lot of the same things. Like if I go back far enough,
Mm-hmm.
there are like a lot of games that are really important to me when I was young have bits about that are important to me now,
Yes.
but it didn't question it. It's more about being able to articulate the psychographic than it changing that much.
It's kind of like, getting a name for something lets you draw like a boundary around it and understand it and conquer it better.
Yeah.
We've just spent a lot of time kind of very frustratingly kind of applying a lexicon to stuff that, just we would otherwise kind of leave unsaid, and therefore it just kind of comes up a lot more, or is better articulated, I guess.
Yeah. And or even if not better articulated, if we don't want to blow our own horn.
No, yeah.
I'm not saying that you're doing that, but
yeah.
Attempted to be articulated, which sounds like that's a minimum thing, like, oh, even attempted. But a lot of times you just don't articulate stuff.
Yeah.
There's a weird, a dream way to live in some ways, right? Like would be like, I really like the act of criticism and critically thinking about stuff. However, like I understand the appeal of if I feel like playing this, I'm going to play this, and then it's fun, and it's like, oh, this is fun, and just being there, like living in that moment. No, this was good. I don't need to think about it. There's an appeal to that.
Yeah.
Chapel says, I recently got a small treadmill for my office with the intent to walk and play video games at the same time. After almost getting yeeted ass first into the hallway the first time I tried to jump into Sekiro, I've had to Jane, stop this crazy thing. I've had to reconsider what games are treadmill friendly. What are some of your favorite slow-paced, controller-friendly games that you played over the years? My brain is too smooth for DOTS2. But turn-based RPG seems like strong contenders.
I don't know what Dots 2 is. Maybe they're trying to say Dota.
Then I thought, I was like, Defense of the Ancients. I was like trying to figure it out there as well. When I was like, I've now been listening to an audiobook and walking around for exercise generally. When I was doing bike and video game stuff, I did an Isaac run.
Yeah.
Because I know it super well. That would be my answer. Like something that you just know very well. That this game is super tricky until you know it. So it maybe wouldn't be good, but maybe something that has that kind of loop where you get a complete game experience.
Yeah.
Like a Monster Train run. Like it's turn-based and stuff. You can take as long as you want to make decisions.
Yeah.
But you get a complete game during your workout.
A Monster Train run would be a very good way to do that, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's just about the right length. If you're doing it every day, a half hour on the bike makes perfect sense, No time demand or anything. This is somewhat tough because like people that I've heard talk about this talk about like, oh, that's where I play JRPGs. That's not what I would do, so it's not what I would recommend, but that is an option that is there for me. The ideal version of this, back when I used the exercise bike a little bit more instead of now I do more like a rowing machine kind of thing, was it was like a console version. I think it might have been 360, maybe a PS3 of Civilization Revolution.
Oh, huh. I can see that working.
Yeah,
just fine.
Because that is the simplified version of Civ that is made. Like the version of it that I played a lot of was on the DS. Even it's just it's mechanically identical. Yeah, it came out on the 360. So
it's on phones too. Like Civ Revolutions is everywhere.
Yeah. I would say Civ Rev would be a good one. Get that just one more turn 4X strategy kind of thing going. It's relatively simple, it's been simplified from like the core base game. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
I've tried to do JRPGs with that, but the trick is you run into a cutscene.
And then it's like,
and then I'm somehow not doing something.
I lose motivation
while I'm exercising. And then I remember that I'm exercising and it's boring and it hurts. And then I want to die. So I need more engagement. Like even like grinding, I could see it working. But if you run into a talkie bit, I'd be like, well, I can't be on the treadmill during this talkie bit.
No. Yeah. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that you almost got sent out into the hallway, Jetson style.
Yeah.
Lewis writes, you've often referenced Tower of Latria to describe aspects of other games not restricted to Souls or FromSoft. Happy to report that I finally played Demon's Souls for the first time on PlayStation 5. Latria is so good and so gross. Also, I love how the first section in the prison feels so indifferent to you as a player. Made me think of the end of Portal a little bit. Have you had any more recent game experiences that captured that cool, I'm not supposed to be here feeling, like the Clockwork Mansion in Dishonored 2? Anyways, love the show. Y'all are great.
There's a bunch of that feeling I think of as broken down into like sub feelings.
Yeah.
Like the Clockwork Mansion is Portal in that you are behind the scenes. That like gives you a behind the walls feeling. Of a production. That's like a specific thing. And then there's Latria, the jail, which is like, I never really put this together, but that's a good point. Like the jail does feel indifferent to you because it doesn't feel like a video game level.
Right.
Like it's laid out not in a way that's particularly conducive to gaming.
Yeah.
It's long, boring hallways and a lot of like parallel identical zones. So that indifference of I'm not supposed to be here because it's not really a place where video games take place. And then there's the I'm not supposed to be here because I'm trespassing.
That's the big one for me. And that, like your example would be, I mean, any number of immersive sims, but especially Thief Simulator.
Yeah, Thief Simulator is great at that. It's the big thing that I got when I first played Maniac Mansion. As a kid, that was like a huge part of that appeal to me. Thief Simulator, big shout out to the Thief Simulator sequel, American Theft 80s, which I need to go back to. I put like 5 or 6 hours into that and started it. It just adds to the possibility space.
Yeah.
Of bigger town, more stuff. That's a really great place for that feeling.
Yeah, I need to dig into that. For that behind the scenes one, a real good version of that was it a BioShock 2 level where it was the
amusement park?
The educational amusement park about how great Andrew Ryan is. Yeah,
that stuff is great. And contrast it with the theme park, like Clanland or whatever it was called in BioShock Infinite, where you don't really go behind the scenes. Like you go into a couple like little side rooms and you get to see an Abraham Lincoln or a George Washington robot being built, but you don't spend the whole time kind of like behind in the rigging and stuff. That's the cool part. It's where every kid wants to go because you can't go there.
I know. It's forbidden and therefore desirable.
What is up with my forbidden closet of gears that will tear your fucking arm off, kid? Clayton asked, hey guys, hope you're well. I was wondering if you guys had any input on the whole Flash game era, a la Andcon, Armor Games, Miniclip. I'm in my 20s, and those were some of the best games I've ever played, some even outranking AAA games that people play today.
I mean, Flash games were fun. Like the New Games era was great. My problem is
Rounds.
What did I say?
You said New Games era.
Oh yeah, New Games.
Like you're running for president. I'm introducing something called New Games for something I'm called New Citizens.
That's what I called it because it was such a great place to go and play new games.
The New Games place. I've experimented with something I call a new man.
I feel like I was just about the right like just about the right age for this when it kind of had its biggest era. Like I was 13 in the year 2000, so just juvenile enough to match the tenor of the humor of people who dedicated themselves to making Flash games. It's difficult because I can't actually remember, like I can't name a specific one that was an obsession or anything because you just kind of cycled through them. They felt very disposable.
Yeah. A lot of them were about like punting Osama bin Laden through a field goal.
There was
things like that.
An awful lot of either helping or hindering the raid on Elian Gonzalez's home.
Yes. Yeah, like either putting up shields to protect him and changing history, or commanding a strike team of crack commando Navy SEALs to go grab that kid.
Yeah.
It was, and then there was the Balloon Boy.
The Balloon Boy was a decade later. Come on.
I know. Yeah, pop. I largely missed the cycle through era of this. Like I still was playing games, but the idea of like cycling through I didn't do. So I played almost exclusively Spider-Man City Raid.
God, it's so good. Oh, Black Betty,
I love Spider-Man
Rama-Lama-Dan.
I love Spider-Man City Raid. And then at my job, I worked at the copier program at NIU. One of the big plus sides of that job is that it was mostly on call, so I had tons of free time. I don't think I was supposed to have tons of free time. I think my boss thought I was busy, but I wasn't. So I would like bring in drum machines and shit to like do work and things. I did not do a good job. But I played tons of desktop tower defense.
Oh yeah,
just hours. Like got very, very far up the tree of desktop tower defense.
Yeah.
The way that you can master a game only if you're doing it instead of your job.
Yep.
Like if you're at work doing it, like it just like, man, I will do this instead of, I don't really know what I was supposed to be doing that I wasn't doing. I guess like just going and checking, making sure the copiers were still going.
Yeah.
Like one by one across campus.
Kind of seems like the job that, if you need to do it, people tell you.
and I did like that. Yeah. That was the thing. But I think my boss would just call and be like, how's it going? Pretty busy over there. And if your boss ever does that and you don't just say, oh yeah, then you're really fucking up.
Yeah.
Just be like, yeah, it's busy. And then she'd be like, okay, well, I won't bother you with this. And I'd be like, great. And I go back to playing desktop tower defense or writing songs or like, any number of things. Yeah.
Oh
Uh,
man, yeah. I've got affection for this. We did one game. We did like a flash game for Abject Suffering, and we discovered. I just went and searched for it. Flashpoint, which is
mm-hmm.
like an emulator, like basically like a store front end for downloading and playing. Just like a huge secure.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
1.5 terabyte collection of just all of the flash games that existed ever. And then we never went back to it. So I need to actually like download this and then go dive in for some gold nuggets.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome that stuff is archived at all.
Yeah.
Like it felt ephemeral even at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to do one more, or let's do two more game questions?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Greg writes, do you recall what the earliest games you played as young kids were? As for me, I'm dating myself. I will turn 47 in February. But I recall playing Space Invaders in 1979 in the arcades when I was 3. Dad had to lift me up so I could play due to my small size.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's coming up here as we're recording.
Yeah.
And as this episode's coming out.
Yeah. My family had an Atari 2600,
Mm-hmm.
and I played Joust and E.T. and Pac-Man and Missile Command and Kicks as a kid. Those are my earliest gaming memories.
Man, Kicks is fun.
I love Kicks. Kicks like holds up.
Yeah, I almost
That
did
game
that.
is legit super fun.
I almost brought that for the last arcade special we did.
Yeah, you could do way worse.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Kicks owns.
For me, it was NES and probably Super Mario Brothers. Primarily, like, I don't know if this is a memory that I actually have or it's just a memory that my family told me about, but like I have distinct memories of like lying down like in the, I don't know what I've been on the top bunk. I just remember lying on the bed and watching my brother play Super Mario Brothers and getting really upset when he stopped playing. And the memory is so specific that I remember that I had these really uncomfortable socks that had little plastic planes kind of attached to them, like buttons. It's like, hey, my socks have planes attached to them, like up around the bands.
Such things, they're horrible.
Yeah.
Like, you just, like they get all twisted. And you step on a little plastic plane.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I remember playing with those and watching my brother play that. Yeah. So pretty basic. I assume that's a lot of people's story, but
yeah, it's fun to think back to.
Mm-hmm. That was short, so let's do 2 more starting now.
Okay. Charmed Setter says, how do you approach an established series that you don't have experience with? I didn't play many games growing up. I found Bonfireside Chat because I started playing Souls games when Elden Ring came out. Picking the games to play or the order to play them wasn't difficult for Souls, but seems harder when I look at the long list of Zelda or Resident Evil or Final Fantasy games. Skip this clunker, do that one first, narrative chronology, release order, yikes. Good question.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing where like, I feel like I have the series I'm going to get into. Mm-hmm. Like I just have the base knowledge, and the series that are like kind of have long running now. I typically have dipped my toe in at one point. I'm just like, I'm probably not going to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
The times I will jump into something that's long running is when I hear scuttlebutt that it's a good place to.
Yeah.
Like the first Fire Emblem I played was Awakening, which is the easy and traditional, like more traditional role-playing game one, and rather enjoyed it. When I ended up going back to earlier entries in the series, I didn't really like them. Yeah. And I didn't like the ones after that either. It was this weird blip. So I tried that, but it was because it was a known entry point.
Yeah.
For that. So I listen to stuff like that, typically.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do this, it is going to be when there is an overlap or intersection between this is a new game and while people are talking about this, even people who haven't jumped into it before. Like, I need to hear from somebody who has no experience with the series and have them say, oh yeah, this is a must. And then decide from there if it is going to be if it's going to be something I need to dive back on if I want to. Like, I don't know if you got into Resident Evil when Resident Evil 7 came out and fucking owned, like, good on you. I think that the urge to go back and play the first one, especially when the series is not necessarily very strongly linked by a linear story. Like I can understand wanting to play Mass Effect 1 before you play Mass Effect 2, right?
It's a narrative game.
Yes.
I
can understand that. I think that is a great way to deny yourself a lot of cool stuff. If I had followed the instinct that I had for years and years, I never would have played The Witcher 3, right?
Yeah. That's a real early example of like it being good to skip.
Yes.
It really is just case by case. In this situation. Like if you played Resident Evil 7 and loved it, like I love Resident Evil 1, even like the original version of it. It's very hard for me to say like, yes, you should 100% play that. Like you might find something to like about it, but you also just might not.
It wouldn't be the first one I would direct you to, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't, again, that series, it doesn't really matter so much with the narrative. Same thing with Final Fantasy where they don't really have continuing narratives, or Zelda, like it's really going to depend on the series.
Yeah.
And also like the big thing with this, the corollary is don't try to force a square peg, into a round hole. Like
I have call it the Monster Hunter rule.
I was just about to say, like I've tried, that is a series where everyone says every entry is the one that is the breakthrough one that everyone should play. And it just has never worked for me.
Not at all.
Yeah. And that's fine. I don't mind.
Not everything has to work.
Yeah. How would you pronounce this? Is this Nicolaj or is this Nikolai with a?
I think as long as they say it looks like Nikolai with a J at the end instead of an I.
Yes.
Yeah.
So apologies for mispronouncing your name. Not intentional. I've just never seen it before.
Yeah.
They ask, is there a general issue here with fan service, or is it more generally recognized as such? And is it getting better or worse? I recently started playing Nier Automata by Square Enix. While enjoying the story and the combat, I have a hard time overlooking the fact that the female protagonist, supposed battle android, is dressed in a revealing short skirt and high heels. I felt similarly about Bloodstained. I read some pretty nasty things about Octopath Traveler and Xenoblade. Tried reading further, but I found a lot of toxicity, so I didn't want to go further.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is a whole can of worms. This is a thing that gets discussed in the Slack, like every 3 weeks, and somebody gets their feelings hurt. Like it's a weird subject that emotions aren't really high on. And it's discourse that touches other discourses in a way that, like, one of the things I was thinking about recently is that I hate it when discourse confuses multiple issues because I don't think the internet is smart enough to handle that.
A bunch of people communicating in very short bursts of text are not able with let's say in each very small and incomplete parts of the puzzle. At that level, the internet is not together enough with it to like come to an answer that is going to, satisfy. I say,
or it even make any sense. It doesn't even have to satisfy. It just has to be cogent. Like as a thought, like there's been people talking about, this isn't in games, it's in movies, but talking about sex scenes, and somebody was like, oh, they're non-consensual, which is an insane take. And then they got dunked on, but then now there is like a backlash to that where people are like, well, maybe people who are against these sex scenes, this is actually like crypto fascist. And it's, the guys with Roman statues in their avatars trying to recruit people about old ways and values. And I'm like, not necessarily. That also seems like an insane take, to be like, I think found the sex scene gratuitous equals, reactionary politic.
Yeah.
It's fucking, there's a real, if online, it's stupid. If not, it's okay. Sometimes. And it comes in discussion. I'm not trying to change the subject. It comes in discussion about game stuff as well.
Yes.
Like cheesecake and fan service and game stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. Specifically with that's a very good recent example. I'm sure there'll be a new one in the 2 days between when we're recording and when this episode comes out. There'll be something new. Sometimes somebody's take is just really bad. Like the other side of that I saw was like, oh, these are young kids who have grown up entirely in an environment with extremely sanitized media. Like, just as bigger films have been kind of cropped back for international markets to distribute for as many places. They kind of have never stopped consuming media that didn't like really address that stuff, like human intimacy outside of like, a wink and a nod and maybe with a little bit of shame, associated with it. And so they might just like literally becoming, just an example of a generation that is not prepared. I saw that as well. And maybe I'm a little bit more amenable to that because it is not, it points to a systemic thing, but also sometimes maybe somebody can just have a really bad take.
Well, and also sometimes like there's a weird way of looking at stuff as if everything is like what is the solution for this problem?
Right.
That will presuppose that it's a problem and that the solution will not also be a problem.
Yeah, right.
Like in discussing it, like when I think about, I am more sympathetic to this asker. Like I get skeeved out. Yeah. I don't like gratuity or gratuitousness. Gratuity is tips. That's great. I tip very well, actually. I do not like gratuitousness in my work. If something is purely for titillation, if it's not advancing character or plot, I don't want to see it. I don't want to have my crank yanked. It unless it's by one of those puppets. It doesn't it feels like I'm being manipulated, and it feels like it's confusing. It's like I'm playing a game, I'm in a game space, and somebody's trying to make me hungry or trying to make me, it feels like that to me. I also don't like it. And I think if this has to be a problem to be solved, then if you had to trace it back, it would probably be back to me growing up and everything being that Simpsons commercial for beer, where they're like, look at those angry feminists. And then they spray them down with Duff and they all turn into bikini babies. Yeah. The Man Show, like all of that shit was all over TV when I was growing up, and it sucked. It didn't only suck because it was gross, it was exploitive and objectifying, but also it was just vapid.
Alienating too. Like I'm straight, but also like I don't know. It seems kind of
I'm straight, but I don't always need to have a fucking boner.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And then, like you run into something like Nier Automata, and Yoko Taro just being like, "Yeah, I figured since you're going to be looking at her, I just wanted to look at her butt." Like he just says it. Like there's no artifice or anything like that. And it's just like I just don't want to have like a mild chubby. The entire, it's like guys who have pictures of women on motorcycles on their wall. It's that kind of thing. It feels very like it just doesn't, like I don't get it. I don't understand wanting to have that yanked 24/7.
And it can be for Yoko Taro of a titillation thing, similar to how it is for what's his name who did Bayonetta. Right. Yes. It's like, oh yeah, this just happens to be my special thing, and I'm sharing it with the world. It's like, all right. Yeah. But also like I'm amenable to the idea that there are people who are just like way down with the aesthetic of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Like it is not specifically meant to, to change, to reroute your blood flow. Right.
There are things that you can dislike about it that are non-sexual. I'm not saying that everyone who likes the design of 2B is necessarily sexually attracted to 2B.
Yeah.
I do think that the camera angle and the way that is shot and the way that characters is designed to be like titillating. It like that is, you can just like the design, just like the outfit and everything. I think it is designed to be like attractive and kind of turn you on a little bit. And it just, but I also like the other thing that asker should recognize is that I'm apparently the outlier weirdo in this, and that this means I'm crypto-fash. But I don't like this. So this is apparently what this means. I don't like this is that I'm all kinds of problematic. But I just, I don't know. A lot of people don't mind it or they dig it. The most common thing I hear from people when we're having the struggle session about this is they just don't see it.
That's, I think that's
the visual novel
common
conundrum. Like, there's a character who just has implausible titties who hang out the entire time during 999 and like people play it and they just don't notice.
Yeah.
It's just a sprite that says these words.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with you for noticing it and disliking it. And you're not wrong that the discourse around it is deeply irritating.
Yeah, it is a briar patch, and it's one that we've run afoul of. I think quite a bit. Something that is happening over on Bonfireside Chat is it's kind of like, oh yeah, the sexualization kind of stuff about certain characters, and like a response that I've seen about that is just like, oh, you guys are older. Like that kind of stuff is kind of being written about and for and by just younger people with different sensibility, and I don't know.
Well, so sure, but what though?
Yeah,
like that can be true, but that is very adjacent to like shut up. Like just don't talk about the thing, and it's like, well,
problematic to not like what I like.
yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know what the solution is. Like I can only be me.
Yeah.
I can only have the response I have. And if the idea is you are, your attitudes on this are so outmoded that like your perspective is no longer needed or valued, like without trying to flex on anybody, that's demonstrably untrue. Like there are people who are interested in it because this is my job. Like the economic realities are not the only realities. Like I get that 100%, but it'd be hard to make an argument that just like this is so out of touch that nobody cares.
Yeah. Maybe nobody that young cares. Our audience tends to fall between us, but also, I don't know, people who are between us, we exist.
Yeah, I still exist. Like I'm not, like I'm not trying to like boomer rights this shit. It's just like, it's gotta be, I want to hear other people's opinion about this shit too. Like it's all valid. So I don't know. It doesn't, again, it goes back to like, why is this a problem to be solved? Why is disliking this thing can't just be a take? Why does it have to be, what is the archaeology of this take? And what does it mean for the politics of the take haver? And what harm will it do to the world?
I mean, yeah. And also like, we're talking about like, this is a thing that you have to have an opinion on, and your opinion is binding somehow. It's not, it's not material. The material way that this, articulates is, I don't like that, so I'm not going to play that game. You were grossed out by 999, for a lot of reasons, but what's her name was a problem. I didn't like her. Yeah, there's a worse one in Virtue's Last Reward, so you didn't continue in that series, right?
Yeah. Or like a better example would be like a Xenoblade.
Yeah,
like you summon gigantic titty monsters in that. I'm just like,
that's not my thing. There's just a lot more. Like the material way is like, I don't know. It's kind of like, oh, you don't like current's big political thing. Like you have an opinion on that. Well, how would you do it better? And it's like, I don't know. It's not my job. I just know the way it is isn't good.
Yeah. I'm just not into it.
Yeah.
Just not into it. It's not a problem to be solved. It is not a riddle, Yeah. So yeah, sorry to tie that into personal stuff and also go on for a while about that. It's frustrating. Like, and it's been in my craw lately because despite shutting off Twitter, I'm still like getting discourse leaks.
It's everywhere.
You can't escape it. It's in the goddamn water.
Yeah.
And I also answered 2 questions in a row. So what does Steve say?
Steve says, this is a life question. What kind of cars have you owned in your life? What's a car that you'd like to own that you think you could actually get in your lifetime? Mine would be an early 90s Oldsmobile Silhouette. Some call it a spaceship, others a dustbuster. I think it's awesome. I need to see Oldsmobile. Tell your answer while I Google this.
I've never owned a car. Okay. My ex-wife had a car, which we drove around my hometown.
Cool.
That's it.
What kind of car was it?
I've never had a car in my title. It is like a white Honda thing, like 4-door sedan-ish.
Oh, okay.
Just car-shaped car. I'm profoundly uninterested in cars. I don't know the difference. I can't spot the make of a car, and I'm colorblind.
Oh,
like
yeah.
my describing a car goes as far as car or truck.
Okay.
Basically, like, and just like, yeah, they got motorcycles. It's unreal. They got motorcycles, but except without enthusiasm for it.
Yeah.
Not a car guy.
Just like, oh, they have motorcycles.
Yeah. They got motorcycles there.
Gosh, this is the silhouette is a real. I'm gonna send you a picture of this.
No, I got it up. I'm pulling it up.
Oh, you do? Man,
Yeah.
that is just like what a minivan was.
Yeah.
Like that is the platonic ideal. That is the minivan they wouldn't let you drive into the building from Control.
Yes.
It's too archetypical.
Yeah, that is extremely archetypical. Yeah, I dig it.
Yeah.
Like it looks like a handy minivan for sure.
Yeah. My first car was a 1995 Pontiac Grand Am. That was a piece of shit. I got it for $1,500, and I think it ran for less than 2 years before everything inside of it exploded. The power steering, the radiator, the transmission. Like it was like a 1, 2, 3 punch within like a 2-month span.
That's not bad for 2 years though. $1,500 for 2 years.
Yeah.
And
then I got my stepdad's Saturn L200, which I crashed. I would have kept on driving that car for years and years, but I crashed it, totaled it. Then a Chrysler 200, and then finally I've got just a succession of Kia Souls. Just all real cheap, no frills, get you where you're going kind of cars. Yeah. And I like to get like a plug-in hybrid or just like a straight up electric vehicle.
Nova.
What's that?
Roadrunner. Nova.
Barracuda.
Yeah.
Those those electric Ford F-150s look really neat. They're just very costly. Yeah, but like an electric truck sounds kind of cool. Yeah.
I think if I were to own a car, all other things being equal, I like a big wood panel, like the family truckster.
Oh yeah.
Like I like wood panel things. I think they're like pleasingly dorky.
Oh, you know how I feel about wood paneling.
Yeah,
put it everywhere.
Great.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorites. So driving around something that looks like a log cabin would probably be my choice.
Agreed.
Moving on to the media questions, David asks, do you have any mixed media titles that you love all versions of? I'm reading the Expanse books right now, and despite watching the show and knowing roughly what happens in them, I can't put them down. Also, I want to let you know regarding the Omega Mart story on Epic Suffering. I went with my wife and daughter. We live in Vegas. It took us about 3 hours to get to the end of the easy mode story. And judging by all the clue threads we had hanging, there was still probably at least that many more hours to finish what we'd done so far on the secret path. Thanks for the good times. Hope 2023 is treating you well. Thanks, David.
Yeah. Man, like mixed media titles that you love all versions of.
Yeah, I think David means instead of mixed media, like I think it means things have been adapted.
Yeah.
In other forms. Because like mixed media, my understanding is that's like a visual art term for this painting has hair in it. Like basically
one of them hair paintings. Yeah.
I mean, it happens a lot, man.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, yeah. So I think that's what mixed media generally means.
Yeah. But like multimedia kind of stuff, I can't think of any that I have loved entirely from like front to back, but like Walking Dead had a good 2 years there where I was real into the games, the comics, and the movie, or not the movies, the games, the comics, and the television show. Yeah,
they didn't do bad.
Yeah,
and then it got bad. Obviously, the comic also got dumb.
Yeah,
sad. As like a Marvel Comics kid, like this, obviously, like I read X-Men comics and watched X-Men movies, and then about half of the Marvel movies or TV shows I think are pretty good. And end up working, when they're based on a comic. There. And then just recently read the comic The Boys and started watching the TV show. The TV show is better, but it is also paced like much slower and differently. Weird. So I think that there's probably a little bit of appeal to each. I don't know if they're the same. There's at least a little appeal.
This isn't a whole series, but I enjoy both the visual novel of Steins Gate and the anime adaptations of both games. The original and Zero. I think those are both really good for different reasons. Same basic story, but different expressions.
Are they direct adaptations?
They're direct adaptations, but they handle the multi-path stuff in a different way. Like they manage to tell those stories without having all the repetition. So like if you want to just get a good idea of what those stories were, I would direct you to the anime, honestly. But yeah. but I have enjoyed both of them for different reasons.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another media question here. Paul writes, in a few episodes of WoF, both Gary and Cole have mentioned playing tabletop RPGs either currently or in high school or college. As a recent convert to the Dice Gods, I'd love to hear who your favorite characters you've played as or alongside are, whether it be D&D, Shadowrun, Call of Cthulhu, or some other more obscure system like, I don't know, Morkborg.
Yeah. Do you got a favorite character?
I mean, because I did all of this in high school, I would say most of my characters were real, kind of like stereotypical.
Dutz Zerden.
Yeah, like
with...
I'm conflicted. Yeah, kind of thing. Yeah, no, but like mechanically, the most fun character that I played. Actually, I told this story on the level this week too. Weirdly, this has also come up, but because I like the Lancer class in Final Fantasy stuff, I just decided how can I use the items in the source books that I have and stats to just like have a guy with a spear try and do drop attacks, basically, like, you know, jump real high and real far and use that to confer advantage on attack rolls or damage, you know, and that was real fun.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I have had a regular game for a long time, so I played a bunch of characters. For a long time I just did wizards. And I did, you know, want knowledge at all cost tropes there, but I've gotten real into playing shitheads and scumbags.
Oh yeah.
It's real fun. So I got the current game. This is going to be the most boring thing in the world for some folk because I'm going to talk about a character I'm playing in a role-playing game. But I stole some, we're doing a Planescape game now in a different system, but that world, so you can kind of be anything. So I stole a little bit of Steez from Tides of Numenera. So I have a guy who is kind of a shithead who has like a little, like a moat, like a presence, kind of like Eratis, except instead of it being this thing that drives into an adventure, it's a thing that eats luck. And he can make he doesn't win. He can make things lose though around him is the idea. So he makes like misfortune happen around him. And then my favorite touch is that sometimes, you know, I have to miss game because I'm sick or I'm, you know, busy or something. When that happens, because it's Planescape and the setting's wacky, my character, who was like a gambler, had bet some of his life to Chronoculus, the Time Terror. And he assumed that they would be parts of his life in his past, but they're actually from the future. So whenever Gary's not at the table, he just blips out of existence and then just comes back screaming whenever Gary's back.
That's a really good idea. I also love Chronoculus, the Time Devourer.
The Time Terror.
The Time Terror, yes.
The system's really, I think it's God, I can't remember the name of it right now. Spellbound Kingdoms or something. The system allows me to take that as like a mechanical advantage. So like if there's a situation in which there's a clicking clock or like time is a thing, I can like roll to my advantage with my history with Chronoculus to see if I have ways to manipulate it. We haven't met, I don't know if we'll ever meet Chronoculus or whatever. But I was just making up names.
Yeah. Do you want to do lightning round?
Yeah, let's move over to lightning round.
There. Okay. Doug writes, Turtle Pope versus the Troupple King. Who is gaming's greatest nonsense animal? Discuss.
Turtle Pope, because you don't have to listen to a whole song every time you use them.
Yes.
Been replaying Shovel Knights when I have like an extra minute, trying to go through some of the bonus campaigns I've never fucked with. Listening to that Troupple King song every time you want to refill a potion is kind of a crime.
Yeah, I forgot that aspect of it. I was going to say I really enjoy the design on Troupple King.
He's great.
Yeah.
But I also love the design on Turtle Pope.
Turtle Pope is good, and I like how he's just a real fucking nerd.
Yep, straight shooter. Chris says, question for Gary. Do you feel better mentally after not being on Twitter much these days? I removed myself from social media a couple years back and felt much better for it. Helped me focus on the good things in my life rather than consistently doom scrolling and wondering why I felt crappy all the time. Hope that is not too personal a question. Not too personal a question. Yes.
Unsurprisingly, yes.
Yeah, it sucks. I wish I had done this sooner. It's wonderful to be ignorant of there are important things that are happening that I'm missing. you know, and missing that sucks. I'm not saying it is a virtue to be ignorant of like world events or something, but I didn't learn about that irritating sex scene discourse we talked about earlier until like a couple of weeks after it started.
Yeah.
Those were a blissful couple of weeks of ignorance where like I was just doing stuff. I was reading books, you know, playing songs. I started learning how to play the bass. Like I've just been living life as opposed to being online. And it's fucking awesome. And like one of the things I was thinking about, I went and saw the new Ant-Man movie yesterday. I was walking out of it and I like rather liked it. I think that's a pretty fun movie. And I was thinking about like, man, if I didn't have internet, I would just like tell my friends that I saw this movie or they'd go see it with me and we just talk about it and it'd be great. And I wouldn't have to know about just the reams and reams of irritating discussion that has happened about that movie and like think pieces and takes and all of these things that have like come out that orbit it.
Yeah.
You know, I would just be like, oh no, I just saw a pretty fun movie and that can be the end of it. It kind of goes into that earlier bit. Like, why is this a problem to be solved? You know, nothing can just be like, everything is a puzzle that must be unlocked and, you know, and it can get very exhausting.
Yeah.
Being off of Twitter and not being online as much in general has helped me see some of that shit with clarity.
Yeah.
I think.
Lets you just kind of enjoy the Torah without being force fed the Talmud.
Yeah. Yeah. And nothing wrong with that. Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, I don't think of myself as an ignorant person. I don't think that it's a virtue to not be conscious of social things, but the line has to be somewhere. Like it can't, the social emergencies cannot extend as far as the new Ant-Man movie was a big opening, but not as big as it could have been.
Yeah.
Discuss. Why? I don't want to discuss. Why would we discuss?
I didn't spill a drink on a genie somewhere. And
yeah.
I'm not under some kind of fucking curse.
It's been really revelatory just to like not give a shit about that stuff. It feels great.
Fellas, is it problematic to maintain control and agency over how you spend your time?
Yeah. Guys, is it did I commit a class solidarity crime by enjoying a movie? Yes, no. Like it's been very freeing. And my mood, people in my real life have noticed a marked uptick in my mood.
Nice.
Which is always the best thing when somebody's like, you seem like really in a good mood lately. And I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. I don't have to read every stupid thing someone's ever written, which was previously the geese I was under.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know that this is just a very temporary island. It's going to wash away if it gets bigger, but I have switched over to Mastodon for like looking at stuff, and it's kind of just basically restarting at zero in terms of what you see, and it's been much more it has been a nice methadone. Yeah.
It's good to it does feel, I still like find myself wanting to open Twitter. When I pick up my phone, like there is an addictive quality to it.
I mean, men in white coats with clipboards sat around in a room trying to figure out how to make you always like this food.
Yeah, exactly. Like food scientists made me like it.
Yeah.
I can't, it still works on me. I'm not saying I'm immune to it.
Yeah.
But it is, there's a gradient.
Yeah. Let's see. Naveen writes, with the prevalence of recording capabilities in modern gaming platforms, how often do you snap a screenshot or record a clip? I like to use these features not necessarily to share, but to create a gaming scrapbook of sorts for myself. I still have a clip of my first time I beat Gwyn in Dark Souls, and it makes me smile anytime I watch it.
I've never taken memory stuff, but I will take clips if something funny happens.
Yeah.
I have like a bunch of screenshots of funny Leon Kennedy comments from Resident Evil 4 of him just going up to computers and being like, wow, what a console and shit like that. I think that's great.
Yep.
When I was playing Midnight Suns, there's a cat that lives on the base and you can run to every once in a while. You click on it and you say something and then it purrs, but the purr file is always the same. And it's this very like clipped purr. So I just like cycle through all the like, who's a good kitty? Who is a good girl? Just like, and went through all of them several times and created a very funny, surreal little 30-second clip.
This Gary cat Sounds an awful lot like a Gary Scorpion.
I never told you, Pocket, he's got with that traditional stinging cat tail.
Oh.
And, the traditional
like
cat legs.
That Bartholomew from Nedroid has?
Yeah, exactly. Or that cat that Milhouse finds on the beach.
Oh, yeah. That's a doggy. It's a good doggy.
Nice doggy.
Oh, gosh.
Do you ever do clips?
Only if it's funny. Like I'll sometimes go back when I'm when I take a funny clip, I will look and see like the PS5, the PS4 did this too. We'll take an automatic either a clip or a screenshot when you get an achievement. Mm-hmm. And even though achievements are generally annoying, oftentimes they happen at cool points in a game, so it's fun to look at that. But yeah, I generally, if it's funny and it's worth sharing as like a social media post, that's when I will go for it.
Yeah, glitches and stuff.
Yeah.
Airtrick says, Gary, what's the latest with Frankenstein? I know it's Gary. What's the latest Frankenstein? It's like somebody trying to make up cool. It's like the Turtles writers, what the neutrinos would say instead of hello. I know it's been a while since you moved, but are you glad to be rid of it, or do you sometimes miss its freewheeling ways?
I mean, people might need to learn what Frankenstein is because it's been years.
Several apartments ago. Yeah. Frankenstein was a Mustang with the word Frankenstein written across the side in black duct tape. That used to just kind of rev its engine on a parking lot.
That's so cool.
Dude, you don't know the half of it. It was extremely cool. I don't know the current fate of Frankenstein. I don't miss it necessarily. Mm-hmm. But the way that my apartment is now, as opposed to being on a duplex on the ground floor, I'm no longer an apartment on the fourth floor. So if somebody were to do that now, it would be like 1,000 times louder.
Oh yeah.
Now like every once in a while, some car will rev, mm-hmm. which is just like, yeah, cool, man. Like all the dorkiest fucking thing you can do in the world.
Oh yeah.
And it's louder than anything, and it sucks. So I wish Frankenstein well, but I don't miss Frankenstein.
Yeah. You don't miss him, but you're glad you met him.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't trade the memories. Always have Frankenstein.
Yeah. Andy K250 writes, please describe the worst meal you've ever gotten from a restaurant. Mine was beef and broccoli from a right off the interstate Chinese restaurant that clearly used to be a ranch style home. It was like cold Dinty Moore beef stew, and even though I didn't get sick, it was somehow worse than the meal I had from the Universal Studios Bubba Gump Shrimp Factory that gave me food poisoning.
Shrimp poisoning,
shrimp vomit, shrimp diarrhea, pine nuts, grape nuts. Sorry,
little sugar butts. Yeah. The one that always pops in my head is I ordered pizza once from like a Grubhub or a DoorDash, mm-hmm. and I didn't realize that I was just using whatever I had like discounts on, like who had coupons.
Yeah,
because and I got a pizza and it had the 3.5 rating on Grubhub, which is always a gamble because sometimes like the food will be good at 3.5, mm-hmm. but somebody will get an order wrong or it'll be late or something that's not somebody's fault.
Yeah.
It's user ratings. But turned out this was a side gig of a Chinese restaurant that also just made American style pizza. Huh. And the American style pizza was like if cooked in the middle vertically, but the cheese wasn't melted and the crust was still doughy.
That is
like
so
that
is the opposite of the way that it usually goes.
Yeah, it was real weird. Like the middle was hot and I got onions on it and they were huge pieces that were raw.
Oh.
Like the biggest like onion ring style onions cut in half that were raw. And it was just really foul.
Yeah.
Could not resuscitate it in any way. The worst pizza I've ever had.
Went to a local restaurant pretty soon after I moved up here with my mom and my brother, just wanted a night out kind of deal. And we went there and also kind of clearly a place that used to be a ranch style home, just like kind of a squat business, like a bunch of businesses have been there. I ordered I wanted a buffalo chicken wrap because that's mm-hmm. the thing on the menu that looked like it was going to be real good. Mm-hmm. It took 50 minutes for our meal to get out. Even though even though there was what appeared to be a group of employees just kind of sitting and chatting very loudly with each other a couple tables over. It came out. There was no there was no big piece of like buffalo chicken in there. It was just like a bunch of like I would call it a dustin. It's a dusting.
Some scrapples, some scrapplins.
Yeah. Instead of like like crunchy lettuce like you would like in a wrap, it was just the kind of wilted purple pieces from a from like a spring mix kind of thing. And not melted, like not integrated into the dish at all, just very clearly grocery store shredded cheese.
Yeah, that sucks, man.
Yeah, and it was room temperature.
Yeah, that's real gross.
Yeah,
that's gross. We're going to a convention again for the first time, so I'm looking forward to some food compromises probably.
Yeah,
like they did a pretty good job. They've had it like catered by real people. From time to time, but that was also the convention which I had those noodles.
Oh god, those fucking noodles! Yeah,
inedible noodles. It was just like basically like a pad thai, but it was just very thin noodles covered in chili powder.
It was a bad Thai.
Like it was incredibly bad Thai. It was the worst. Yeah, disgusting. Yeah. Bo says, if it was guaranteed as wide an audience as you could hope for, what's a project outside of podcasting that the two of you might like to pursue together? The adventure known as marriage.
I mean, I'm not crazy about that, and I don't think Olivia would be either.
Oh, let me worry about. Okay. Let me worry about my wife. Okay.
Okay. All right. No, that was presumptuous of me. I'm sorry.
No. Yeah. We talked about a couple things.
Yes.
Is all time based, like not having extra time because the thing we do now takes up all our time.
Yeah. Yeah. And because we had talked about those things, I don't know that I feel comfortable saying it.
Yeah, we might do it.
We might do it, and I don't want to set an expectation. If you say you have a plan for something, people ask you about it. Yeah. So
the hint I'll give is the thing that we talked about that I'm thinking of. I'm not really worried about an audience for. It's more just we don't have time to do it.
Yeah.
So
that's the that's the thing. Guaranteed an audience. I don't know, lots of stuff. Like I don't know, like doing more like streaming stuff together would be fun because it's always been a good time when we've done like adaptation decay material as a stream or like do a roulette of abject suffering stuff. Like
for various fests.
I've always enjoyed that. But yeah.
It's hard to turn into an ongoing concern because again, we're busy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Final lightning round one. Mick writes, you've been selected to compete in the video game Olympics. You have a year to prepare for 3 events: speedrun, multiplayer, and high score challenge. What would be the games you would choose for each of the 3 events?
That's tricky.
Yeah.
That's a fun question. Speedrun's really hard because I don't know if it's compared to other people. Like the winning strat of this would be to pick something nobody speedruns.
Yes, but I don't know a game nobody speedruns.
Oh, and I mean, they put them up on Speed Demos Archive or whatever. You would just think of games that you might be able to, like old, weird, obscure games.
Yeah.
And then just look in there. It seems like that would be, rather than trying to get like good at Dark Souls speedrunning or something like that.
Yeah. And speedrun Bad Rats.
Yes. Yeah, something like that. Non-deterministic physics is great for speedrunning.
I know, right? Well, I mean, it'd be luck based, and that is, and I could focus if it's just going to be luck. Then I can focus on the other 2 events.
That's true. Yeah, or like doing something like Isaac, and just you get teleported to get Mom's knife, like in the first room.
Yeah,
and that's what you need.
Yeah.
Multiplayer. What am I good at multiplayer? How much?
Yeah. That's a thing. Like again, it's real competitive. I don't know that a year would be enough to get like really good at multiplayer, like a real-time strategy game or even a shooter, right?
Yeah. I would have to choose something like a Jackbox game for this, which is cheating, but like it is multiplayer and competitive.
In terms of fun, like 2v2 Team Fortress 2 would be really fun to do. you know?
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Like, and then high score challenge, like what can you get a high score at?
The only thing that I can get a high score at that I have been very good at in the past and could probably brush it up in a year would be Rock Band.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, I might be able to get, I was never that great at Rock Band, but with a year of practice, like I was decent, and I could probably get okay at it. Or then maybe like also like when I was in most practiced for when we did the show on it, I was getting pretty good at some pinball tables. I might be able to take a year and practice on that.
See, the thing is, these aren't ones that I would win is the thing, but I could disgrace my country playing these and having a good time.
Yeah. We would lose.
Yes.
Like that is just really clear, I think. This would be a nightmare scenario if we got selected for the video game Olympics.
Oh no.
It'd be an honor to compete, but like, I don't think that we'd win.
Yeah. Only somebody that I hate would do this to me.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And now we have our topic. Vaping with Dad. I love that name so much.
It's a great name.
They write, the first time I heard Gary say there are infinite games out there and you'll die before you can play them all on the podcast, it helped me reevaluate some of my gaming habits, particularly FOMO for big new releases. I've had Elden Ring downloaded for months now, and I know I'll like it, but for whatever reason, I haven't been in the mood for a From game since its release. So instead of forcing myself to play a good game at the wrong time, I don't mind waiting. And if I die before that happens, well, I still played some other cool stuff. As you've gotten older and wiser, what are some of the biggest gamer epiphanies you've had that have had a positive influence on how you now approach the medium?
Yeah, like things you've realized that help you interact with the hobby.
Yeah,
better.
I think Vaping with Dad arrived at a really good one, which is it's just a different version of like play to your strengths kind of deal. It's not really worth you doing something you're bad at that you don't feel like doing if it's going to get you a bad result. All things being equal and time not being a concern kind of deal. Yeah. Forcing yourself to play something just because it is current. For that FOMO, let alone buying it, which is its own kind of problem. That's just a really good way to spend time doing something you really don't want to do, and possibly will sour you on a game that you would really enjoy at a different time.
Yeah. There are some people for whom that is their job. Like if you're a games journalist, like I get it.
Yeah.
But you can see, I feel like it is very obvious as somebody who reads like games journalism that you can see where the like living that way influences taste and reviews and how game journalism works.
Yeah.
So like we talk about game of the year things and how a lot of times people don't have enough time when they're doing that to really stick with something. So something that will make a really good first impression will sometimes get really lauded. Something that doesn't show its strengths immediately will get kind of ignored.
Yeah.
And that is born of needing to be current.
Yes.
And games are long. Like it's not like being current with movies or current with, I guess it's kind of like being current with TV because there's a lot of TV out there, but it's not like being current with movies. Yeah. Games take a really long time.
You could watch two movies a week and be pretty up to speed,
Yeah. Two or three. And that's still less than a game, almost any game, like in terms of time. There. So like trying to be current on it, what I think it means is a lot of people will sample stuff. Like they play the beginning of something and then if it grabs them, it grabs them. If not, it's not, but then they can say they've played it.
Yes.
And the value of that's going to kind of vary from person to person, whether that's good. But if that enters like a critical realm where the person who, can say they've played it, then is on the hook for like writing an article about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a limited perspective, right?
It is, but there's another factor, which is, I think, I don't know. Don't check my math on this, but it kind of feels like the number of people who make a solid living writing about games critically is probably fewer than the number of people who have been into space.
Yeah.
So trying to live your life like that as a consumer would be a little bit like, well, I've got to eat and train like an Olympic level athlete.
Just in case.
Just in
Yeah,
case.
I'm not getting I'm not getting to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
I just so like that is a big one.
Yeah.
I think. The other thing about there being unlimited games out there, like that has helped me from not feeling guilt about stuff I play. Like if I'm playing something that's interesting to me, then I'm doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be playing something that's interesting to me and then feel guilty that I'm not playing something else that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
And that's just simple, like understanding I can't be in two places at once.
Yeah.
Having a finite amount of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that applies to games too. It applies to fun stuff as well as non-fun stuff, I think.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of a version of being present or, something like that. I have, like just a version of this again, following your energy, since we hired Gwen, which has been amazing. I've had more time to play stuff for me and still ends up going on the level. But like, I've been in a real big city builders strategy game kind of a barrel for the last month or so, let's say. Right now I'm replaying Frostpunk because I'm a little bit depressed right now,
Yeah.
and I want to play something I really like. And also there are scenarios in that I haven't finished. So I'm getting good at Frostpunk again so I can conquer those, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just understanding like I can play a bunch of these kinds of games in a row and really not feel like I am doing something bad because I know that eventually I'm going to get out of this and then get into a jag with a bunch of other stuff. Just like allowing myself to kind of eat what I feel like my body needs,
Yeah.
kind of deal. Yeah.
As I get older, that is such a better I just really like every time I've chosen that, I've felt good.
Yeah.
Like I understand the argument against, which is that, it is good to be a well-rounded person and that enjoying the medium means enjoying all of the medium,
Yes.
but people who say that are never playing new Madden games,
Mm-hmm.
like there's whole swaths of the medium that they're missing as well.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of an affectation.
Yeah.
Almost. And like if there's something I hate, it's like artifice in that way. Like I hate a lie.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather just be like, no, this is what I want to play with. This probably won't last forever. If it does, and that's the worst thing that happens to me in my life, that's probably not such a bad life.
Yeah.
Like if I can't for my job, but I mean, other things being equal.
Yeah.
Like just like, I play the types of games I like, and the new Zelda Breath of the Wild comes out and I don't play it because I'm not in the mood.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? Nothing. Like it's fine. Again, it all goes back to that, like not a problem to be solved.
Yeah.
Thing. Like, questioning the assumption that something is an issue, I think is good.
Yeah. There's probably been a great deal of damage done just by the act of consumption becoming a bit of a more public, becoming more of a public process, right?
Yeah. Very much so.
Even if you're not doing it for yourself, there is the problem of comparing your backstage to somebody else's front stage,
Yes.
So this happens with much more serious things, body issue, body image, like economic stuff. But like, if you're just basing your opinion of the things that of the games you are playing based on what everybody else is talking about, they're presenting an idealized version oftentimes because they have much more time or they work in a job that gives them exposure to stuff. And so even if you are not, living for, consuming for Twitter or for TikTok or any of that kind of stuff, that can still kind of splash over on you, and that guilt can get in. And that leads to another kind of another thing, which is, this is one I hit pretty early on, but understanding the difference between finishing a game and being done with it.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Like I tend to, if I like something, I usually want to see the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a correlation, a general correlation of like, I did not beat something with it not being something that I really love.
Mm-hmm.
Not always though. There are things that I rather like that I just never got around to. And those are things I would describe in your terms of like, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of times if I'm done with something, it's in disgust. And if I beat something, it's because I like it.
I cast thee out.
Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, fuck this, you know, and then I'm just done with it. I bail.
Yeah.
On it. That's part of it too. Like that's a side point to yours, but like be okay with being done with like bailing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, cut bait.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if something is just like not fun, like, yes, I think that there are times you can get through a bunch of unfun stuff and then end up at something very profound.
Yeah.
I also think that that's in my experience, and other people, you know, their experience might differ, but for my experience, I'm not surprised by that. I'm not like usually blindsided by it, you know, where I'm like, oh man, I fucking hated this, but it turned out I really liked that I did it.
Yeah.
And like, usually it's something that I can tell, like it's pushing and pulling me.
Yeah.
You know, a little bit. And if it's going to have the thing where the friction is worth it, I know pretty early on.
Classic example, Pathologic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Great example. You know, like there were things early on in that make that you can tell that's worth it. You know, but I reject the idea that because that's worth it, everything is worth it, or the idea that because anything could be worth it, everything is worth it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. The other anti-pattern on that is I cannot react to this or form an opinion until I am done with it. And oftentimes that includes doing every hunt in Final Fantasy 12, like just optional shit. It's like, no, you don't have to be completionist. There are people
real
who
Scotsman shit. Like,
there are people, you know, your experience with the game is valid, even if you don't, you know, have the gene, you know, the epigenetic, like the switch flipped that makes you into a completionist. Right.
Yeah. Don't let anybody gerrymander you out of having a perspective. You know, like if somebody is saying you didn't really do this because you didn't do blank X, Y, and Z, like, no, you did it. You just didn't do it without X, Y, and Z, and you had your reasons, and like you just had different experiences.
Yeah.
You know, this is really zoomed in and minor, but it helps Epiphany. And we say this a bunch and it's going to sound like cliche, but use your consumables.
Oh yeah.
Really, you know, again, that's like very brass tacks and not like a philosophical epiphany. But once I started doing that, all video games became more fun.
Yeah.
Like legitimately across the whole board, everything is more fun.
Yep. It's almost like they designed the game for you to do that. And
like games where they force you to, like I love like in Divinity Original Sin 2, when you're in the prison in the beginning and there's like the shitheads playing cards and it's a really tough fight and you can just barely beat it if you like throw grenades and shit at them. That's a great feeling. Like I couldn't do this. I can though through using these tools. Oh, did I come up with some kind of secret hack? No, that's the fucking game. They gave you the tools. Like that is the game. It was a self-imposed silliness. Yeah, it was a silliness to say I can't do this because maybe I'll need that grenade later. Like they scale. You know, the developer knows. You know, these are bad grenades. Use them now.
Yeah.
If it's in the game, it's in the game is another one.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it is okay to have self-imposed challenges and stuff, but don't let anyone else impose them on you.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to say you didn't beat Celeste because you turned on infinite stamina, they can go fuck themselves.
Yeah. Sit on attack.
Sit on attack. Like they don't get to control. I get like all of this stuff is just general Duckfeed, like harsh individualism stuff. Like, you know, don't let somebody gerrymander you or label you against your will.
Fuck those fools. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you don't have to listen, you know, to people telling you stuff like that.
You know? You know what? Sometimes an old game, you don't have to make yourself like it just because it's old.
Yeah, there's a great one.
I'm feeling myself just kind of like, I think we're at a point where I feel an awful lot about games from the PS2 and GameCube era, like I do about stuff from the PS1 kind of era. Those are feeling similarly, let's say adolescent, not from like a juvenile kind of point of view, but just like, oh yeah, like there is just an inherent awkwardness and gonkiness to these with that with time is much easier to just kind of understand that's just the way they are and it's okay to be put off by that.
Yeah, you don't have to, like, it is, and it's not always true, you know, and there are also games that are great in spite of that.
Yes.
Or that are forward looking enough to avoid
you
know, a lot of that stuff. Like it's not a absolute rule,
you
know, but there are old timey awkwardnesses. And again, if you can get past that stuff, like you may get rewarded for it. Like, I think anybody who pushes past the interface to play Fallout 2 will have a good time.
Yes.
You know, I like Fallout 2. I think it's a great work of art. If you can't do that though, like this going back to the original thing that Vaping with Dad brought up, like you're going to play something else instead.
Yeah.
And probably be okay. You know, like you can be put off by varying things. You can be put off by things from those old games. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you'll just do something else instead. You be water, you know, flow around rocks.
Yeah.
You know, old games. The other thing I think about is games that, and this was a hard one, and this is more personal than like something that I ascribe to people. But because I liked something when I was young does not mean I have to like it now.
Yeah.
You know, going back and revisiting something, I'm not really losing something if I discover something I really loved was not actually so good. Because I'm constantly gaining things as well.
Yeah.
You know, like yes, I can go back and be like, you know, Arrow the Acrobat, which I really loved, and like listen to REM's Green until the tape wore out, played Arrow the Acrobat. Going back, it's not a very good game.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like, you know, I have treasured memories of that. I can still access those if I want to. The fact that isn't actually a good piece of art really, doesn't take anything away from me because I'm constantly being inundated with good pieces of art.
Yeah.
There's no, you know, I'm fine. I'm good on it. You know, I don't need to enshrine any individual thing like that.
Yeah, you still got that memory.
Yeah,
like
it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, you know, it just and like that is a grace that we allow ourselves with other kinds of media that I think is tougher with games. You know, I don't know if it's just age of the medium or whatever, but it's like, you know, there are bands that you probably really enjoyed in middle school or high school that you don't listen to anymore. I call that the Blink 82 Valley.
Yeah.
The Blink 182 rather. Yeah. You know, just kind of like, oh, you know, maybe you had some fun times with those albums on. Cool. You're not now. It doesn't mean you have to hate it. It's just like, yeah, it was a different time.
Yeah. It's all fine.
Yeah. Another big one for me is a game with a terrible story and really good mechanics. It will is possible to be great. Whereas a game with a kind of great story or compelling hook with just kind of, you know, trash under the hood, there is a much lower ceiling on how high that can be. And there's something paired off with that, which is oftentimes game developers, you know, just from like, you know, knowing and reading about how the stuff is put together, a lot of the stuff that you know, that is, let's say, kind of like non-mechanical, kind of nuts and bolts story, tone, art, character decisions, things like that, not as much thought and effort went into those as you might have expected coming up. Like those were not, you know, kind of born, you know, perfect and fought for the entire process. It just kind of was an accident that happened, and then they decided to leave it in, you know, kind of deal. So like, you know, a game is not it, you know, it is not just the fiction that is, you know, included with it. You know, that is, you know, important, yes, necessary, you know, arguable, but make or break, no, not really.
The weighting is different than I thought it was.
Yes.
When I was younger, it's very hard for me to think of a game that plays like dog shit that I still think is worth playing.
Yeah.
You know, and when I say plays like dog shit, I don't just mean like awkward.
Yeah.
You know, Pathologic is awkward, but I wouldn't say it plays like dog shit. Like there's interesting things happening with those systems. They're just harsh.
It's also giving yourself permission to like something too. You know, a lot of this about permission, and I'm phrasing stuff like that just because I'm in kind of an introspective mood. But it's like, you know, Monster Train. I don't like the art in Monster Train at all, and the, you know, like the lore and stuff. I don't really care about these characters or what's going on, but I still would rank that among some of the best games I've played in the past, you know, 5-10 years, something like that. And
it's just real fun wireframe.
Yeah, and I would say like 15 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case for me. Yeah.
I probably would have been more put off. And then also letting yourself be put off by things as well. You know, we talked earlier, I was talking about not wanting to look up 2B's asshole for an entire game. I don't want to name them because I don't, you know, want to talk smack, but there's a YouTuber who I follow who was talking about going back to a game that they'd bounced off of. And they said something that made me feel like an absolute alien, where they were like, the main thing that I get from games is how the graphics look and how the music are. So I'm very rarely disappointed in games. Like I see that stuff in the trailer and I know at least I'm going to be able to see this and hang out with these characters and listen to this music. And I've never felt more alien to a perspective than that. It just like, jaw dropped, like, that is a way to think about something. Like if you're going that gut instinct of just like, this looks good and sounds good. And just like, that's wild.
Yeah.
To me. That's it, huh?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of the only reaction that I can have is,
This is very surprising. Like, and that person also has permission to be that kind of gamer.
Yeah.
It's just not me.
It's a kind of an analysis that I can reject too. And I get really annoyed when I sometimes listen to a video game podcast and all they talk about is the premise, the setup, and, a little bit of like, this cool thing that happens thematically. And it's like, we're going to get to the fireworks factory.
Yeah. It's actually has been a big thing with the game that shall not be named right now. And talking about how to discuss that because like, big shout out, like there have been a couple of really great reviews of that. Gita Jackson, they did a really great review for Polygon. I really like Will's review of it. And the reason why I like those is because like culturally, I'm very interested in that cultural discussion.
Yes.
Right. Like I have trans friends. I consider myself to be, I try to be the best ally I can. I do not want to support the game that will not be named. All that stuff's interesting to me, but also it's a video game.
Yeah.
And like tons of people worked on it. Like I wanted to know, like, what is this as a game?
Yeah.
That's still got to be part of the conversation.
Right.
I didn't want to just like, here's the premise and some of the positive reviews of that game were basically what you're talking about.
This made me feel like I, was in this world that I really treasured as a young child.
Yeah. Which is a data point, but it's not the only data point. It's not the only thing that is contained within that. Games are big and complicated.
Yeah.
So finding something that like holistically looked at everything, including how it played, not just like how it looked, sounded, or what happened, like what themes it was engaging with, was something I was very hungry for. And it took a little bit to get, it took a little while.
Yeah.
And
almost like reviews that are not necessarily under the gun of an embargo deadline tend to be a little bit more thought out.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like, and that are not also, they didn't fly the journalist out to like Candyland.
Yeah.
To, Big Rock Candy Mountain to, So just, that's kind of a scattering of Epiphany like things.
Yeah. Epiphany-esque. Yeah.
Yeah. Things that all of this comes down to knowing yourself better.
Yeah.
And knowing what you like and where you're going to fall on this stuff and gaining a perspective. And I think that's the trick, like in all of these things, you can be like, no, I actually really like saving my consumables. Like I really, it's important to me to try to stay up on all the modern games because I really enjoy being part of that conversation. That's cool. Like, I'm not trying to, take that away from you. These are just things that when we say epiphany, we're not saying we found universal truths. We found things that made it work easier for us.
Yeah. Like the epiphany is like, I get to decide how I feel about this. It is that radical individualism, I think is how you said it earlier.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, my buttons are on the inside. My buttons are not on the outside. Right.
Yeah.
And that for you can include us not pressing your buttons when we give our own. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well said. Okay. That's going to be it for this episode until we read your responses, which we recorded at another time. So here they are. And we did all the other stuff then. Now to read your responses to this month's games, I'm going to get started here with some responses about Luca. First one here from Andrew. Andrew from the Slack. Hey, Andrew. Andrew says, I don't hate Luca so far, but I don't really like it, and it feels weird to be so neutral on what seems to be such a polarizing game. It reminds me of the Mitch Hedberg joke, to paraphrase. You either love Luca, or you hate it, or you think it's just kind of okay. I thought I'd be bothered by the art, but I don't feel strongly about it. At first, I disliked having so many very similar combat styles thrown at me, but I figured out a playstyle that works okay for me. It's not particularly fun, but the sound design goes a long way towards making it feel satisfying. Even the mysterious dialogue and themes just feel very whatevs. Knowing the main dev grew up religious makes me appreciate the clearly personal nature of the work, but I'm also kind of over media that feels like it's ambiguous for ambiguity's sake. Maybe I'll feel more strongly one way or another once it forces me to play through a second time. I have a guess on which way that'll push me.
Yeah.
You basically got it all there. Like the feeling of it being, it's one person's thing and it's very personal and it's about their experience. So it's genuine, but also too obtuse for its own good. Like where it still kind of pushed me away too well. Like it's meters, it's a balancing thing for me.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you on saying it feels weird to just feel kind of mid about something like this. Something that is, as opinionated in its design, right? And, kind of no middle sliders in terms of visuals and the way it chooses to tell its story and stuff, to kind of see all of that and then come out like, yeah.
I haven't thought about Luca at all since
right.
we did it. Again, that feels mean because it's clearly a really personal work, but it did not leave a big impression in my life, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dylan writes, Luca reminds me of Gary's 40-70-90 rule from the early episodes of Bonfireside Chat. Games that explain 40% of their lore are too nebulous to really make anything of it, often providing more questions than answers, as gamers wish cast their lore into the aether. However, games that explain 90% of their lore often go so far as to disallow players from diving into their own interpretations or feelings about what the game might mean. The sweet spot is that 70%, enough to provide direction and clues that the players can then riff off of and discover for themselves. Luca is interesting and frustrating for straddling both sides of the rule, like the enlightened centrist that it is. Enlightened centrist, that's not a thing you say. That's not a nice thing to say. The first run through of the game is smack in the 40% side, especially in how characters change line shapes. Can't really call them sprites, can I? And the landscape is a vaguer interpretation thereof. But upon that second playthrough, the game shifts massively to the 90% side and explains everything right off of the bat, which is anticlimactic as all hell, and ends up being unfulfilling, as I felt like no real effort went toward my ability to interpret the game on its own terms. Perhaps this is, as was discussed on the episode, due to the developer's fervent desire for everyone to understand what was going on. I get that. I'm not a game designer, but I'm sure developers are under mental pressure they're under mental pressure to make their message known. But that kind of separates Luca from a Hollow Knight or Dark Souls, where the developer has the confidence for players to figure out the game, or the confidence to accept that some people just might not get it. For my own purposes, I liked Luca a lot. That evil vaporwave aesthetic can carry a game far, man.
Evil vaporwave is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's even though I do think that like the second playthrough, it starts at 90. And then goes right back to 40.
Yeah.
It starts with all of the stuff, but we're still dealing with like the same character referred to by multiple names, and not just for gender reasons, which is obviously also for obtuse reasons.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it does aesthetically. I have no problems with it. I like the music. I like how it looks quite a bit.
Yeah.
Finally, about Luca, Bo says, hi, although I play alongside the show without writing in for the discussions, I thought it would apply specifically for Luca because you brought up wanting to hear from its queer player base. I was expecting to like this game considerably more than I did. I was piqued by the positive coverage it received from Errant Signal and became actively interested when hearing the synopsis of the game. One's trauma of grappling with one's religious upbringing told through a queer lens, relatable. However, despite my being in the group for whom this game was speaking, I found the narrative to fall flat, not only because of its poor storytelling, but also because of the brilliance with which other art objects have more artfully accomplished similar goals. I know that it's Duckfeed policy not to hold that the perfect is the enemy of the good, but the entire function of the plot seems only even remotely efficacious if it was taken as a cousin of media, which has actually done the work of medially representing its concerns with the religious oppression faced by people the world over, but by queer people herein specifically. Every piece of iconography in the game either seems nearly plagiarized from media which more cannily investigates tensions of personal religion, Your Winter's Lights, Sinners Get Ready, and Binky's Brown, or a broad reference to queer online frustrations vented in shorthand on places like Twitter or Tumblr. I just didn't find that it used any collating elements of play or storytelling available in games to effectively investigate what it demands we see as aggressively dramatic. Thanks for the show. Y'all are rad. Thank you, Bo.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the idea that this, like one, it's something I try to remind myself all the time as like a cis straight het, dude, is that no oppressed people are a monolith. Right.
Right.
So like, I'm really happy to hear from you, Bo. There probably are people who, queer people in the community who this did really resonate with, but you're not a hive mind. I think that's something that's really easy for, cis folk to forget, straight folk to forget sometimes. So it's interesting that like this is playing in a theme, the experience of this being laser targeted at you, for your interests, but just not doing it very well. It's interesting. It's not enough to have something like marketed towards you or be about something you're interested in. The execution also really matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No notes. Yeah. I just, that all tracks for me. It makes sense.
What does Chaz say about Citizen Sleeper?
Yeah, moving on to Citizen Sleeper. Chaz says, Citizen Sleeper was my last minute game of the year for 2022, as I subscribed to Game Pass to binge/mop up some of the year's indies in December. I really love the writing throughout, but my favorite moment of writing is a small one. You babysit Mina so Lem can go to work. As Mina is gradually warming up to you, it describes her pantomiming walking her stuffed rabbit up my arm. It was a small moment, but it succeeded for me in how I instantly could picture that moment, as well as times I've had that same experience in trying to entertain children in my own life. In the end, I left the station with Lem and Mina. I wanted to get them onto the ship and stay on the station, as I wasn't sure how my sleeper would have access to the medicine I needed on the ship, but I couldn't bring myself to part from my found family.
Yeah, that is a really nice, relevant detail.
That is, yeah. Just I'm comfortable enough with you to, just have my toy near you and play with you with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And walking a stuffed animal down somebody's body is like an incredibly specific but relatable little bit of agreed. Yeah, no notes as well. Naveen says, love the episode on Citizen Sleeper. It was one of my favorite games of last year, and it was a delight to hear Wolf cover it so soon. I think I'm mostly in agreement with your opinions on the game, but I wanted to dig a little bit into the question of whether the game would have been more effective if the protagonist was less of a cipher. While I certainly understand that this comes to taste, I found the ability to place myself into the role of the sleeper to be quite effective in getting my buy-ins to the struggles being faced, similar to other empathy simulators such as Cart Life or Papers, Please. Basically, by having the sleeper be a nothing character, it helped me put myself in the role of a helpless nobody on the station finding community and family while struggling to survive. It also calls to mind the tabletop games that Citizen Sleeper takes for inspiration, where the player is left to define their character in relation to the world. In any case, totally valid that you guys wanted more from the sleeper as a character, but that begs the question, are there types of games or scenarios where the cipher player character can work better than one that is more defined?
So I think in the answer to the last question, that kind of gets to some other thoughts about cipher characters in general, and even the tabletop kind of feel like there are games that have done that. But the important thing is, like, I'm thinking specifically of BioWare games, Mass Effect, and then especially Dragon Age Origins, where in player creation, the choices that you make at the start define a past that is referenced or impacts certain things. I think in Citizen Sleeper, and especially as it mimics or apes tabletop play, even tabletop play will have you make a couple of character trait decisions. Not just you, the player, are this person. You are inhabiting somebody else. And much like I think we would have, enjoyed seeing a little bit more of the downside of the political and economic system that you faced, the hardships that are present on the eye and in the setting as a whole. I really, in a game that is talking about, how much of you is human and how much of, the past should you hold on to in the face of these, kind of extreme circumstances, having anything definite about the past, about your character, about what you were like or what you kind of came from. I think that would have only served to bring a little bit more specificity to the narrative, and thus make it, thus just kind of improve it broadly overall.
Like, specificity is the issue,
Yeah.
right? So like in a tabletop game, you start as a cipher, you're just you, but then the you that's there makes decisions that define the character. Like you will end up with if you're, at least when I play a tabletop game, when you're role playing, you end up creating a character.
Yeah.
Even if you end up creating it through the course of your decisions. The issue that I had with Citizen Sleeper was that there is not a character there. You're just a helpful robot. Like your goal, the way to succeed in the game is to be a saint and do everything for everyone, and not particularly have like a very strong opinion about it.
Yeah.
You, the player, can have an opinion about it, but your character doesn't have a lot. And there are like little tricks you can do in video games to present this, where like, if there was a little bit more flavor to the dialogue, your dialogue choices that you could respond with, maybe if they didn't feel quite so blank.
Yeah.
Things like that, where it just ended up feeling like I was literally playing a helper bot at points. I think that a cipher character works in a game where a character is not important to it.
Yeah.
Like it works in like Oblivion, because all I'm trying to do in that game is be the god king of every guild and see all the stuff. Like, it has got nothing to do with character. Like it's got nothing to do with stories. There's no characterization happening in that game. It's not about that,
Yeah. And it's not pretending to be about that either,
That's
like except in main stories where just like, oh yeah, you're the chosen one, which is basically not a characterization at all.
That also may as well be a cipher.
Yeah.
It's just it really is. It's the normal thing for video games to do, and it's the exceptions. Even games I love, right? So not bad mouthing stuff. Like in the early Fallouts, you don't really play a character in those. You can have kind of an idea of like, I'm going to be an abolitionist. I'm going to be a scumbag. I'm going to be a mercenary. You can kind of make choices like that, but you're not playing too much of a guy. But there's a reason why things like Torment, or Disco Elysium stand out, because like in Torment, you literally have amnesia, but you were a character, a very strongly defined character with a very strongly defined voice, many of them, and you get to decide which one you resonate with most. To me, I find a lot more truth in that than being the main character, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Like a cipher is always the main character and the world revolves around a cipher, no matter what. Yeah. If you can be a character, you can be part of the world. And that's kind of what I think we were picking up on.
Yeah. Agreed. Ethan writes in, this has ending spoilers. So if you do not want to hear this, fast forward about 3 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
Ethan writes, hello. It was great to hear you guys discuss this game. You didn't talk about it during the episode, so I'm not sure if you have read this particular ending, but if you decide to leave the eye with Lem and Mina on the horizon, the game delivers a truly crushing gut punch. For me, I got carried away by Lem's big talk of starting fresh on a completely new planet. This dream of an idyllic home with found family seemed the most attractive option. The sleeper and their new family boarded the ship with such excitement and hope. However, I clearly wasn't thinking about the consequences of abandoning the eye and abandoning the sleeper's source of stabilizer. Slowly over the years, the sleeper begins to break down despite Lem and Mina's attempts to fix them. Eventually, the sleeper begins shutting down for longer and longer intervals until one day, Lem isn't there anymore. It's just the sleeper and Mina. At some point, Mina has to shut down all but the sleeper's most vital systems. To the player's knowledge, Mina is left all alone on the new colony world, and the sleeper never gets to experience their dream of living in peace with their new family. After that, I needed to put the controller down and take a mental break to process everything. This ending was in the back of my mind when Gary was describing this game as quote, hope punk. For me, the hopefulness was a real selling point, and this bleak ending definitely surprised me. While the eye was home and good people were there to help support each other, the sleeper themselves was trapped there. It was a prison in its own right. While helpful, the stabilizer synthesized from the fungus is one of the only reliable resources the only reliable resources for the sleeper, essentially chaining them to that place. The sleeper couldn't escape the reality of what S and ARP did to them. This specific ending runs contrary to the hope punk feeling of this game to deliver a real unforeseen gut punch flying in the face of the game's earnest optimism.
I wish I got that ending.
That's brutal.
Yeah, that's interesting. That deals with consequence and deals with, your character's past and what they are. It puts it at the forefront as opposed to making it, a chore that you can basically obviate throughout the game. I just didn't get it. That's cool that it's there. Yeah. The endings that I did get, the other stuff that I did do was pretty sunny stuff.
Same.
But I'm happy that's there.
Yeah. That detail of just going out for longer and longer, one day Lem just isn't there. That is devastating. The idea you're just one day you wake up and this younger relative is years older than the last time you saw them. That is one of the most existentially upsetting parts of the movie Synecdoche, New York. Just in between scenes, this person who is 4 years old suddenly a teenager and hates you, right?
Yeah.
It's
a super cool idea.
Yeah.
Again, that I think that's a narratively satisfying ending. I liked my ending too, where I became a plant god. It just was, it wasn't particularly bleak. Moving on to responses about Subnautica, Tom says, as a scuba diver and part-time thalassophobe, that's a fear of depths, Subnautica captures and amplifies both the wonder and the horror of deep water. I've poured countless hours into the game and scanned every type of Leviathan, but I have never ventured an inch out onto the crater edge or gone beyond the Aurora. The very thought of that murky water full of reapers, with the sheer sides of the Aurora looming impossibly high above, puts me into panic mode. The game handles discovery and the unknown so well. If I could wipe one game from my memory and experience it fresh, it would be this one.
There, Tom, you're not alone. There's at least one other person with thalassophobia who wrote in about this, and also, but they are not somebody who also scuba dives. So good on you for conquering that.
With fire, naming your fears and thus
containing them. Yeah. And that is I get it. I get the fear, and I've definitely been made anxious about depths in games. I think everybody has, at least of a certain age, has a distinct memory of swimming down into the sunken ship in Mario 64 and being chased out by the eel. But Subnautica didn't trigger that for me. It's just phobia profiles.
I sometimes in this game didn't get me scared of being in water other than the things that are in water at all, but I get terrified playing Tomb Raider and being in the water. Part of it is the lack of control. It's the fear of stuff sneaking up behind me, basically.
Yep.
So
Clayton writes, "Hey guys, longtime listener, first time response. Thank you. In Subnautica, I always had background music via my headphones alongside my headset. Role-playing as if my Altera PDA had my library of music created an epic moment. I was standing on the precipice of the second magma zone. I was quite nervous, and Maggie's Farm by Rage Against the Machine was reaching its breakdown, and I mustered all the courage I could, cranked the tunes up to 11, and used my grapple arm to propel myself forward, and I flew past the sea dragon as its fireballs rained down behind me as I reached the portal room. Very cinematic and awesome.
Very metal.
Fun coincidences.
Yeah. Rage Against the Marines. Rage Against the Marine.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, Rage Against the Marine. Yeah, I knew there was something in there. Yeah, we've been recording a while. Give me some grace. Jake says, as somebody with a crushing fear of open water, Subnautica spent a few years on the list of games that I own but had no interest in playing. Hearing it on the schedule pushed me to give it a try, and I'm really glad that I did. More than any other game I played, Subnautica made me feel empowered as I made progress. I went from spending 5 hours swimming around the safe shallows because I was too freaked out to stray into the kelp. There's mean dogs in there. To fearlessly piloting my Cyclops through an active volcano. Unfortunately, I think the game loses a lot of what makes it special as you explore more of it. So much of the fear and excitement comes from not knowing what could be deeper down, and once you know what a particular environment can and can't do, they just don't live up to those first terrified glimpses promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get the containment space of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like things that and there's value to that, like something that looks scary but actually can't hurt you that much, or that you can easily run away from.
Yeah.
You know, there's tons of value to that. But once you know the trick, it's like a magic trick or a joke.
It turns into a video game. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It turns into a video game.
Yeah. Wesley writes, Subnautica is one of my all-time favorite first 2/3 of a game. Hearing a screech of a nearby Leviathan is a truly unique horror that I cherished experiencing for the first time. Exploring in your sea moth to find the remnants of others who tried to survive is good fun. Finally getting to build the Cyclops was so exciting. What new stuff did the endgame have in store? Oh, a collectathon. And wait, the story ends with this over-explained nonsense? The horror of the Leviathans ended for me when I got trapped in an endgame area. I just could not get around this thing to escape, so I resorted to shocking it and slowly beating it down with a knife. This killed the horror of exploration, and the collectathon vibes really kicked in for me. Finishing the game became a grind that I spent that I spent reminiscing about those feelings that the early game gave me.
Yeah, I would I actually really like the plot stuff at the end, but the gameplay, like the grocery shopping at the end is when it got most tedious for me.
Yeah, I've not heard people say, "Oh yeah, that's where this game sings." Where you're going to get these,
collect the 10 doodads for the sperm potion or whatever to make the eggies. Yeah, nobody loves that. It's just silly. Like it's I don't know how to do a climax in a game that is ultimately like you collect this many rocks. How to do a mechanical climax other than collecting rocks?
Yeah.
I just we talked about one thing being like having to get through a very tough monster zone or something. That's kind of what Outer Wilds did.
Yeah.
With going through the I can't remember what it's called, the thorns.
Yeah, go through the eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. But even that was a little bit frustrating. Like I don't know how you do a climax to a game like this necessarily and absolutely land it.
Yeah, I don't have a reckon on it.
Yeah. Moving on, we've got Guillem says, I know that most letters will veer into thalassophobia, but I can't help doing it too. The game scares the shit out of me. It's a beautiful, magical, singular game that also sparks fear like nothing else. I like to say this is because of the game's perfect grasp of cosmic insignificance and the casual cruelty of both nature and bureaucracy, but really it's just the Reapers. All of that conceptual stuff falls away when there's an angry demon the size of a jetliner rushing out of the murk to scream in your face and eat you. It's just so brutal. It's a lot like the demon fish in Outer Wilds. Scary, yes, but also weirdly kind of low blow. Maybe compared to where the rest of the game was pitched. Don't get me wrong. Smart games have the right to monster. It just feels a bit out of character when it happens. They are pretty great though. They have those good faces. Demon skull sharks with fins and claws that make them a bit spidery, really playing all the hits as far as nightmare fuel goes. Mostly, they're arg monsters of the lowest kind, and they should be cast into the abyss. Not as punishment or judgment, but because I think they'd have a nice time. Also, I'm from Subna, Utica, and I never heard anyone use the phrase steamed hams. That is deep. P.S. I really like the crab squid sound design. It's like somebody fed a sleeping giant a talk box. Yeah, weird theming. You know, the idea of the monsters being kind of a low blow. We just recorded unfilmable about Creep, which has like way more jump scares than it should.
Yeah,
and it feels a little bit like a low blow for the tenor the movie's going for. You know.
Yeah. It's and also like how temporary that is. Like it's a trick that only works a couple of times with these monsters, right? And eventually it just it's a video game. Yeah, you just remember that, and that is a line that horror games have to walk all the time. You know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks everybody for writing in. We really appreciate you.
We do. If you have thoughts about next month's games, which are Cuphead, the coin game, Mark of the Ninja, or Crisis, write in by March the 15th at Duckfeed.tv/contact. And if you have responses about multiple games, please separate them into multiple responses.
Yeah. I've been having a lot of fun in my house playing a little character I like to call Mark O the Ninja, who is an Irish ninja who lives in my house. Talks to Pocket.
Does he do anything different?
No, he mostly walks around and talks like a cop.
Okay.
He mostly walks around going, "How are you today?" And then sometimes going, "The child."
You're so canceled.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's still safe to do fake Irish cop accents. Yeah. If you have anything to say about April's games, you can write in by April 15th. And those games are Ender Lilies, The Sexy Brutale, and The Quarry.
Yeah. It'll be fun.
Yeah. I fairly, we recognize this as a very indie heavy quarter. You know, it's probably a thing to get used to. We try to balance that stuff out, but also that line is getting blurrier all the time. See last month's dispatch. Yeah. But
by April 15th. And that is going to be after we go to the Midwest Gaming Classic.
Yes. March 31st through April 2nd, we will be there with or without bells on. We're still getting
it depends on if I can find my bells.
Yeah. They've been in storage. We haven't gone to a con in a long time. So we're still getting everything straightened out for what we're going to do for our panel and stuff. But at the very least, we're going to be sitting at a table and we'd love to talk to you.
Yes.
So come say hi. Get some buttons or something.
Please say hi. Yeah. If you haven't already, you can go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and kick us a few bucks a month. At $5, you get the full version of the premium episodes and whole bonus shows and such. And at $10, you get Adaptation Decay, our show about video games being adapted to other media, and Quackstack, the show that we do with our producer Gwen, which is a good, fun time with a fun theme song that Gary did.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I think that's basically about it.
Think so. Thank you to our producer Gwen. Speaking of her,
big thanks. And everybody take care.
Please
see you soon.